What if we told you a royal wedding secret just exploded on video and Meghan Markle is at the center of it? A royal nanny has just released a shocking hidden clip that allegedly shows Meghan Markle slapping a Givenchy staff member right in front of Princess Charlotte. The reason? The staffer was following Kate Middleton's quiet instruction to fix Charlotte's bridesmaid dress. Now, the footage is circulating online, royal aides are breaking their silence, and even longtime supporters are stunned. Was this the real Meghan behind palace doors? Stay with us as we uncover the unseen chaos behind the royal wedding, the cover-ups, the cries for help, and a moment that could change how the world views the Duchess forever. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The footage was grainy, clearly recorded on a phone, but there was no mistaking what was captured. The moment the video hit the internet, silence fell across corridors where secrets are stitched tighter than the threads of a royal wedding gown. For decades, the British monarchy has weathered scandal, heartbreak, and betrayal. But this was something different. Not a tabloid rumor, not secondhand whispers. This time, it was on video. A royal nanny, once silent, had released what is now being called the most damning visual proof of abuse of power inside the royal household. A clip showing Meghan Markle slapping a Givenchy staff member. The alleged trigger? That staffer had followed an instruction from Kate Middleton to adjust Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid dress ahead of the royal wedding. It was a scene many thought had long been buried under the polished perfection of the 2018 Windsor Castle wedding. A ceremony broadcast across the world, choreographed like a fairy tale, elevated with Hollywood flair and royal elegance. But now, the moment that had been reduced to Meghan made Kate cry in tabloid shorthand had taken on a new and startling life. There was no crying in this clip. There was confrontation, rage, and a slap. The internet ignited. Screenshots circulated like wildfire. Headlines exploded in multiple languages. Social media was a battlefield between stunned outrage and fervent defense. Within hours, hashtags like #MeghanSlapgate and #JusticeForCharlotte began trending. But what no one expected was the slow, deliberate unraveling of a far deeper and more disturbing narrative. This wasn't just a celebrity temper tantrum. This was a window into a power struggle behind palace gates, one that involved class, culture, legacy, and control. The video itself, released anonymously but accompanied by a detailed statement, appeared to come from someone who had witnessed not just that isolated moment but an entire string of chaotic events during the days leading up to the royal wedding. The statement didn't just mention Meghan. It also detailed behavior patterns, emotional strain, and the immense pressure faced by the Givenchy design team, all while dealing with conflicting demands from Meghan Markle and Kate Middleton. The staffer who was struck reportedly had one job: to make sure Princess Charlotte, barely 3 years old at the time, looked flawless in a dress that had already become a contentious point of disagreement. Kate Middleton, deeply involved in her daughter's preparation, had raised concerns about the original design. Multiple fittings had been arranged, and the Givenchy team was caught in the middle. The slap, as described in the statement, was not only about the dress. It symbolized a much deeper resentment toward the palace hierarchy, toward being challenged, toward being defied. What makes this story even more explosive is that the footage had been kept quiet for years. If the nanny's testimony is to be believed, there were multiple copies of the clip, and several senior household aides had knowledge of its existence. It had circulated within private royal circles, perhaps used as leverage or simply stored as part of an increasingly complex archive of royal drama. But it had never been made public until now. Why now? Why did the nanny, who had remained loyal to the firm for over a decade, suddenly decide to share this clip? Was she disillusioned by the continued silence from the palace? Frustrated that the narrative had always painted Meghan as the wronged outsider, while shielding behavior she had personally witnessed and recorded? Her motives remain unclear, but her timing is unmistakable. With the monarchy already navigating new waters under King Charles's reign and Harry and Meghan continuing to shape their narrative from abroad, this bombshell could not have dropped at a more precarious moment. The video, while short, reveals volumes. According to experts who analyzed it frame by frame, it was captured just days before the wedding, likely inside one of the private palace salons used for final fittings. The audio was muffled, but key voices could be identified. Meghan's voice was sharp, direct. The Givenchy staffer, a woman of French descent, is seen kneeling beside Charlotte, pinning the hem of the dress, when Meghan storms in. Words are exchanged. Charlotte flinches. Kate's voice is heard off camera, attempting to calm the situation. Then, the slap, swift, shocking, and met with stunned silence. This singular moment now threatens to undo years of carefully curated public relations work. Meghan Markle has spent much of the past 5 years reframing her royal experience through the lens of racism, isolation, and institutional resistance. Her sit-down with Oprah, her docuseries with Harry, and her podcast appearances all centered around being silenced, bullied, and misunderstood. But the slap, if authenticated, flips that narrative, placing her in the position of aggressor, not victim. Even those who had long defended her began asking uncomfortable questions. Was this truly an isolated incident? What else happened behind closed doors that the public was never told? And why had the palace, including Prince William, Kate Middleton, and Queen Elizabeth herself, chosen to stay silent? As the clip spread and reactions poured in, more pieces of the puzzle began to surface. Former staffers who had remained tight-lipped began to whisper. Journalists who had previously hit walls while investigating the royal wedding chaos found their phones ringing with new leads. And royal watchers began poring over old footage and photos from 2018, re-examining moments they had once dismissed. Many were reminded of reports that multiple royal aides had quit following Meghan's arrival into the family, citing unreasonable demands and emotional outbursts. At the time, these reports had been labeled sexist or racially motivated by Meghan's defenders. But the Nanny's clip forced a re-evaluation. Could there have been truth buried beneath the media spin? The Givenchy staff member in the video has yet to speak publicly. Her identity remains shielded, but insiders confirm she left the fashion house shortly after the wedding. Some speculate she was paid to keep quiet. Others believe she left out of sheer trauma. Whatever the case, the footage now speaks on her behalf, and its voice is deafening. Meanwhile, questions swirl around the palace's response. Will they acknowledge the video's authenticity? Will they condemn the act or stand by their decision to protect the institution's reputation above all else? And what of Meghan herself? Thus far, no official statement has been issued. Her PR team has gone silent, a stark contrast to the usual rapid-fire rebuttals. In the court of public opinion, however, the tide is shifting. While Meghan still enjoys strong support among her core fan base, others, including some former allies, have begun to express dismay. The narrative is no longer so clear-cut. Sympathy is being replaced by skepticism. And for the first time in a long time, Meghan Markle is facing a crisis that can't be controlled by interviews, documentaries, or polished photo ops. This story is far from over. In fact, it's only just beginning. Over the next several chapters, we will explore the origins of the dress-fitting saga, the deeper conflict between Meghan and Kate, the unraveling of Meghan's relationship with palace staff, and the long-reaching implications of this single slap. Not just on Meghan's reputation, but on the entire fabric of royal storytelling in the 21st century. From the designers who sewed in silence to the aides who were forced to pick sides, and from the child caught in the middle to the monarchy now caught in the spotlight, this story weaves a complex, emotional, and explosive tapestry. A royal wedding is supposed to symbolize unity. But behind the scenes, what unfolded was a quiet war. And now, the first shot has been heard, not through words, but through an action captured forever in a single frame. It began as a hushed rumor, an unconfirmed whisper among palace aides and royal watchers. But when the clip emerged publicly, everything changed. For years, the British royal family has been wrapped in a cloak of carefully curated tradition, opulence, and poise. But one grainy, poorly lit, and emotionally charged video threw that illusion into chaos. It revealed what no press release or documentary ever had: raw, uncontrolled fury. It wasn't a palace press statement or an anonymous leak through the tabloids. It was moving pictures, a direct portal into a private moment that had now become public. The clip, barely 38 seconds in length, surfaced late at night, posted to a secure anonymous server, and then mirrored instantly across social media channels. It began abruptly, no opening, no explanation, just the sudden burst of voices in a modest, elegant-fitting room filled with white lace and ivory gowns. In the corner of the video, standing rigid with a measuring tape in hand, was a petite woman, later confirmed by insiders to be a member of Givenchy's in-house tailoring staff. She was kneeling beside a small girl dressed in white, Princess Charlotte, barely recognizable except for the unmistakable golden curls and solemn eyes. The room was tense. You could hear the kind of silence that isn't really silent, the sound of people holding their breath, knowing something uncomfortable was about to erupt. Then came a door slam. Meghan Markle stormed into the frame. Her expression was unreadable at first, tight, cold, clipped. Words flew quickly. The audio, though muffled by distance and rustling fabric, captured phrases that left little to the imagination. Meghan was upset. Her tone was sharp. The Givenchy employee looked startled but calm, continuing her work as Charlotte glanced toward the camera, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing. And then it happened. A single slap, swift, precise, jarring. Meghan's open hand connected with the shoulder and side of the staffer's face. The woman fell slightly sideways, catching herself on the fitting stool beside her. The room fell into dead silence. No one moved. No one spoke. From off-camera, a voice emerged, Kate Middleton, unmistakable in tone, calm but firm. That's enough. The video ended as quickly as it had begun, but the impact was seismic. Within hours, the clip had gone viral. Media outlets scrambled for confirmation. Was it real? Had it been doctored? Where was it filmed? The answers came quickly. A former royal aide confirmed the room as one of the private salons used for final wardrobe preparations at Kensington Palace. The wallpaper, the mirrored paneling, even the crown-embossed footstools, there was no doubt. This wasn't a deep fake. This wasn't CGI. This was real, and it had been captured by someone inside the palace. Speculation turned quickly to the source. Who had filmed it? Why now? The royal nanny's name was never mentioned, but accompanying the clip was a written statement posted to a private media server, reportedly vetted by independent security experts. It read, "I served the royal household loyally for nearly a decade. I was present in the room that day. I recorded the clip not to destroy anyone, but to preserve the truth in case lies were ever told about what happened." This was not the only moment of conflict during that week. There were others. Moments of cruelty, disregard, and emotional manipulation directed at staff members, especially those below Meghan's perceived station. I kept this recording hidden out of loyalty. But loyalty goes both ways. And when the truth is buried, it becomes a poison that infects everything. This anonymous confession changed the nature of the conversation. It wasn't just about the slap anymore. It was about betrayal, hidden abuse, power imbalances, and the culture of silence that the palace had fostered. Within 24 hours, news organizations had picked up the clip, dissected it frame by frame, and verified its authenticity through multiple sources. The Guardian called it the most explosive piece of royal evidence since the Diana tapes. CNN ran a special segment titled "The Slap Heard Around the Commonwealth." Piers Morgan demanded immediate accountability on his talk show. Meanwhile, commentators and experts began placing this new revelation within a broader timeline of royal tensions. But the biggest question remained: why had this never come out before? Multiple insiders hinted that the video had, in fact, been seen by several senior figures within the royal household shortly after it was filmed. It was reportedly stored in a secure internal drive, its existence acknowledged but its contents never publicly addressed. Some believe the footage was used as part of a confidential HR review into Meghan's treatment of palace staff. Others suggest it was quietly buried to avoid destabilizing the already fragile relationship between Meghan and the wider royal family during the run-up to the wedding. One senior staffer, speaking under condition of anonymity, stated, "The decision not to act on the video was political. The wedding was seen as a symbol of unity and progress. The optics of punishing the first biracial member of the royal family, especially so publicly, would have been catastrophic. There was a collective decision to absorb the shock internally and push forward with the fairy tale. But now, with the footage in the public domain, that internal decision was unraveling. Public outcry surged. Activists and public commentators who had previously championed Meghan's story found themselves grappling with a moral dilemma. Could they continue to defend someone caught on camera displaying such behavior? Was the slap forgivable, a moment of stress under immense pressure? Or was it indicative of something deeper? Legal experts weighed in. While no formal charges could be pressed retroactively without a complaint from the victim, workplace assault is no minor issue, especially when it involves physical contact between a public figure and an employee. The Givenchy staffer in question had since left the company, her current whereabouts unknown. Some reports suggested she had signed an NDA shortly after the wedding, a common practice in high-profile environments, particularly those involving royalty and major fashion houses. Meghan's legal team remained silent. Requests for comment were met with no statement at this time. Her allies on social media attempted to reframe the narrative, calling it a character assassination and accusing the royal establishment of using the video to discredit Meghan ahead of her next media appearance. But these defenses were thin, and for many viewers, the evidence was impossible to ignore. In the days that followed, multiple former royal employees began speaking to the press, emboldened by the clip's release. Without revealing confidential information, they confirmed a culture of fear that had taken hold during the final weeks of the royal wedding preparations. Meghan, they said, was demanding and easily angered. She viewed staff less as collaborators and more as obstacles. One former dresser claimed you could be screamed at for placing the wrong shoebox near her fitting chair. The Givenchy clip, according to these sources, was only one of several heated confrontations between Meghan and staff. Another insider recalled how one assistant left in tears after being publicly berated for suggesting an alternate tiara fitting. That assistant resigned 2 days later, citing exhaustion and workplace hostility. But what perhaps shocked observers the most was the silence from Prince Harry. In the leaked clip, Harry is not seen. His voice isn't heard. He's absent, and that absence speaks volumes. Critics began to ask, where was Harry when this happened? Did he know? Was he informed? And if so, what did he do? Those close to the situation suggest that Harry was selectively shielded from certain episodes of Meghan's temper, either by his wife herself or by staff afraid of upsetting the balance. Others believe Harry was fully aware but chose to ignore or downplay the incidents in order to maintain unity and shield Meghan from further media scrutiny. Whatever the case, Harry's reputation is now tied to the fallout. The couple's public image, already strained after years of conflict with the press, the palace, and even their own family, is teetering once again. And while some believe they can weather the storm, others argue that this moment marks a point of no return. Because the clip is more than just a video. It's a mirror held up to the royal institution, to the people who manage it, and to the narratives we choose to believe. It challenges the myth of the perfect royal wedding. It questions the legacy of silence. And it asks us to confront the uncomfortable truth that even in the most polished of places, raw, human ugliness can exist, and sometimes it gets caught on camera. The story of Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid dress should have been a minor detail in the spectacle of Harry and Meghan's wedding, a footnote in the broader narrative of romance, tradition, and modern royalty. Yet it evolved into one of the most explosive behind-the-scenes scandals to ever rock the royal household. While millions watched the televised wedding ceremony in awe, few knew about the emotional storm brewing around a child's outfit. But as the truth began to surface, especially after the release of the Nanny's damning clip, what was once dismissed as tabloid exaggeration revealed itself to be a critical flashpoint in the implosion of royal relations. The origins of the dress saga trace back to the final weeks leading up to the May 2018 wedding. Princess Charlotte, then just 3 years old, had been selected to serve as one of the 6 young bridesmaids. As the only daughter of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, Charlotte's inclusion was both expected and symbolic. She was the youngest senior royal participating, and her presence was a point of pride for her parents. Naturally, Kate Middleton took an active role in ensuring her daughter would be comfortable and appropriately dressed for the occasion. The decision to have Givenchy's then creative director Claire Waite-Keller design Meghan's wedding gown, and by extension, the bridesmaid dresses, was one of style and symbolism. Meghan, an American actress marrying into British royalty, had wanted a woman designer from a storied fashion house with international appeal. But as fittings began, sources say it became apparent that Meghan had a specific aesthetic vision, one that didn't always align with traditional royal protocol or with practical comfort for the children involved. Charlotte's original dress was made of ivory silk with delicate floral embroidery. It was minimalistic, understated, and very much in line with Givenchy's modernist design ethos. But Kate reportedly found the dress lacking. According to insiders, she raised concerns about its length, the fit around Charlotte's waist, and the absence of a lining that would prevent scratching. Kate, known for her meticulous attention to detail, wanted adjustments not as a matter of personal taste, but to ensure her daughter was not uncomfortable during the lengthy proceedings. The problem arose when Kate's requests were passed along to the staff and intercepted by Meghan. The royal nanny, in her now public statement, revealed that Meghan viewed any alteration made under Kate's direction as a challenge to her authority. What could have been a routine adjustment spiraled into an emotionally charged power struggle between two women embodying vastly different roles within the monarchy. Kate, as the future queen consort, was concerned about her daughter's well-being. Meghan, as the bride and a newcomer to the institution, was determined to establish her position and execute her vision with minimal interference. Witnesses described a tense atmosphere during the final fittings. According to one palace seamstress, you could feel the air go cold every time they were both in the same room. Meghan was in full command, and Kate was quietly resolute. Neither would back down. And stuck in the middle was this little girl who didn't understand why the adults around her were so tense. Reports began to leak just weeks after the wedding. At first, it was suggested that Meghan had made Kate cry during the dress dispute. Then came a counter-narrative that it was Kate who had reduced Meghan to tears. Both stories were vague, supported by anonymous sources, and quickly buried under the wave of positive press surrounding the royal nuptials. But after Harry and Meghan's 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey, Meghan herself weighed in. She claimed it was Kate who made her cry, not the other way around. She was upset about something, but she owned it, and she apologized. "And she brought me flowers," Meghan said. The statement was carefully phrased, but the implication was clear. Meghan considered the matter closed, an unfortunate misunderstanding between two women under pressure. That comment reignited public debate. Royal correspondents scrambled to confirm the sequence of events, but the palace, consistent with their tradition of silence, refused to comment. For years, the incident lingered as a foggy rumor, weaponized by both Meghan's supporters and detractors. That was, until the footage emerged, placing the incident in a new, unmistakable light. The Nanny's video revealed not only Meghan's slap, but also the precise context of the confrontation. In the clip, the Givenchy employee is seen kneeling before Charlotte, attempting to subtly adjust the hem, an adjustment that, according to insiders, had been ordered by Kate herself during a private discussion with the design team. Meghan's fury, then, was not at the work being done, but at the idea that it had been done without her consent, or, worse, at the behest of her sister-in-law. This seemingly minor moment became a flashpoint for larger tensions that had been simmering for months. Meghan, by many accounts, was already frustrated with the perceived constraints of royal life. She wanted to modernize, to shift the tone, to do things differently. Kate, as the more experienced royal, favored consistency, tradition, and protocol. Their personalities clashed. The dress became a battleground. In the days following the slap, more palace employees began to come forward with their own recollections. One former assistant revealed that Meghan had, on multiple occasions, insisted that nothing gets changed without my final approval, even for details she had delegated. The Givenchy staff, caught between two powerful women, reportedly found themselves in an impossible position. The anonymous dressmaker later told a confidant, "We were terrified of making the wrong call." One order would come from the Duchess of Cambridge, another from the Duchess of Sussex. There was no protocol for who we were meant to listen to. Kate, meanwhile, remained characteristically silent. Those who know her say she was devastated by the incident, particularly by its impact on Charlotte. In private, she reportedly expressed concern that the palace had failed to protect her daughter from emotional distress. One insider revealed, Kate's instinct is always to shield her children, and she believed Charlotte should never have been present during such an explosive moment. She felt the staff failed to insulate her from the chaos. And indeed, the emotional toll on Charlotte, though never publicly discussed, is one of the most disturbing aspects of the saga. Watching the leaked clip, it's hard to ignore the little girl at its center, wide-eyed and frozen as adults argue around her. She doesn't cry. She doesn't speak. But her expression tells 1,000 stories. Trauma, at that age, is often quiet. It imprints without making a sound. Public reaction to this aspect of the footage was swift and furious. Commentators from both conservative and liberal outlets condemned the idea that a royal child, or any child, should be exposed to such a hostile environment. Child psychologists interviewed on British morning shows spoke of developmental scars that could result from such experiences. One panelist on ITV asked pointedly, if this had been any other workplace, any other child, would social services have intervened? What made the situation even more volatile was the realization that the palace had likely known about this confrontation and chosen to suppress it. Not to protect Meghan, some argue, but to preserve the carefully constructed image of unity around the wedding, an image they deemed more important than truth or accountability. The Givenchy team, though largely silent in public, reportedly expressed deep regret over their involvement. In private fashion circles, whispers suggest that Claire Waite Keller was devastated by the drama and the reputational damage to her staff. One of her assistants, speaking under anonymity, said, Claire wanted to design a timeless wedding dress, something that would stand beside Grace Kelly's and Princess Diana's. But what she got instead was a scandal she never asked for. Today, that dress is remembered not just for its minimalist elegance, but for the chaos that surrounded it. And Charlotte's bridesmaid gown, simple, understated, and now infamous, has become a symbol of a much larger issue: how unchecked ego, silence, and image obsession can turn even the most joyous occasion into a battlefield. This wasn't just a dress. It was a moment in time where roles reversed, where a child's innocence clashed with adult ambition, and where royal tradition buckled under the weight of personality politics. As we move into the next section, we'll explore the perspectives from inside the fashion house itself, the Givenchy team who were tasked with creating beauty, only to find themselves dragged into one of the most intense royal conflicts in modern history. To fully grasp the intensity of the confrontation surrounding Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid dress, one must understand the internal chaos it created within one of the world's most prestigious fashion houses, Givenchy. Known for its elegance, its restraint, and its legacy of dressing some of the most powerful women in modern history, including Audrey Hepburn and Jacqueline Kennedy. Givenchy had never encountered anything quite like the royal wedding of 2018. And according to insiders, behind the carefully sewn seams and pristine white gowns, the team was slowly unraveling under the weight of unprecedented royal interference, conflicting demands, and the emotional turmoil sparked by one volatile bride. At the heart of the story was Claire Waite Keller, the first female artistic director of Givenchy, and the woman personally selected by Meghan Markle to design her wedding gown. Keller was British, modern, and respected throughout the fashion industry. Meghan's choice was strategic, a blend of female empowerment and national pride. For Givenchy, it was a historic opportunity to be at the center of a global event. But what was meant to be a moment of celebration and creativity quickly turned into a logistical and emotional nightmare. The dress, a sleek, structured creation with minimal embellishments, was one of the most talked about pieces of bridal couture in the 21st century. But few knew that in the weeks leading up to the big day, the Givenchy headquarters in Paris and its satellite team in London were caught in a non-stop storm of revisions, changes, and disputes, many of them centered not on Meghan's dress, but on the bridesmaid garments, especially the one meant for Princess Charlotte. A former Givenchy production coordinator, speaking under anonymity due to a lingering non-disclosure agreement, recounted the pressure. We had never experienced anything like it. Every time we sent fabric swatches, thread samples, even basic design sketches, we were told to change them. The tone of the feedback was never neutral. It was sharp, dismissive, often personal. You'd spend 2 nights in a row adjusting lace and pleats, only to be told it looked cheap or uninspired. And then you'd start again. The team was divided between Paris and a temporary London workspace established solely to serve the royal wedding. Paris handled the master gown. London worked on the bridesmaid dresses. Communication was constant and tense. Time zones didn't matter, phones rang at midnight, emails arrived at 3 a.m., and every missive from Meghan or her representatives carried the weight of urgency. The entire operation moved under a cloud of unspoken fear. If anything went wrong, the consequences wouldn't just be professional. They would be public. One team member recalled the specific instructions for Charlotte's dress. It had to be unique, elegant, and consistent with the bridal aesthetic, but also age-appropriate. That sounds simple. It's not. The demands changed every day. Meghan wanted something sharp and minimal. Kate, from what we understood, wanted something softer, with traditional lining and hand-stitched detailing to prevent discomfort for Charlotte's skin. They were speaking through intermediaries, not directly, and that caused confusion and resentment. The dressmakers found themselves in the crossfire of 2 duchesses, one representing the institution, the other attempting to reimagine it. The staff grew weary. Several privately complained to their superiors that the situation was toxic, with one referring to the workplace environment as an emotional pressure cooker. Another recalled a particularly cruel moment. One team member had worked overnight to create a draft version of the dress. When Meghan saw it, she didn't even acknowledge the effort. She said, "This looks like it belongs in a bargain bin." We all stood there, stunned. It was clear to many in the design house that Meghan was not just particular, she was possessive of the entire visual narrative of her wedding. Every thread, Every bead, every hemline had to conform to her vision. There was little room for collaboration or feedback, and when objections came from Kate, from the royal nanny, or from any member of the staff, they were met with cold hostility. One senior Givenchy tailor shared this: "We've worked with royalty before. We've worked with celebrities, CEOs, heiresses. Never have I seen a client wield her power in such a punishing way. It wasn't about the dress. It was about control. Anyone who stepped out of line, even slightly, was either ignored, corrected publicly, or, in one shocking case, physically struck." The tailor was referring, of course, to the slap that shocked the world. Among the employees, the mood shifted drastically after that incident. While only a handful witnessed it in person, word spread like wildfire within the fashion house. Some staff were deeply shaken. Others demanded to speak to management. One individual reportedly filed an internal memo about workplace aggression, though it remains unclear if it ever reached Givenchy's legal department. Most remained quiet, knowing that they had signed strict confidentiality agreements that prohibited them from speaking publicly about the wedding or its behind-the-scenes complications. But the impact lingered. At least 3 employees, all junior-level assistants, quietly left Givenchy within 6 months after the wedding. Some cited burnout. Others simply said they could no longer work in an environment where abuse was rewarded and talent was dismissed. One departing staffer reportedly left a note on their resignation form: "We were not dressmakers. We were punching bags." What perhaps frustrated the design team most was the lack of gratitude. In interviews, Meghan often spoke glowingly of the gown, the process, and her connection with Keller. But behind the scenes, according to multiple witnesses, that warmth was rarely visible. "It was all for the cameras," said a seamstress who worked on Charlotte's dress. She wanted the world to believe she was collaborative, gracious, and deeply involved in the creative process. But what we saw was a person consumed by image and unwilling to allow anyone else, even those who had trained their whole lives for this moment, to share the stage. Claire Waite Keller herself has never spoken about the incident, and it's unlikely she ever will. Fashion houses, especially those with royal ties, operate on strict codes of discretion. But those close to her have hinted at the toll the experience took. One friend, a fellow designer, commented in a private message later leaked to the press: "Claire left Givenchy with her head held high, but what she endured during those months could have broken anyone. She gave everything to that dress and was rewarded with chaos." The relationship between Givenchy and Meghan never fully recovered. Despite early speculation that Meghan would become a long-term ambassador for the brand, collaborations fizzled. She later appeared in Dior, Carolina Herrera, and other high-end labels but rarely returned to Givenchy. The royal wedding was supposed to be the start of a dazzling fashion alliance. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of what happens when art is forced to serve power. Even now, years later, the echoes of that chaotic period remain within the corridors of Givenchy's Paris headquarters. Older staff remember it as the Meghan season, a time of anxiety, sleepless nights, and constant revision. New employees are warned not to speak of it. Some of the workstations used during the London fittings have been mothballed, their presence a quiet memorial to a moment that was supposed to represent joy and unity but instead became a symbol of division and fear. What began as an opportunity to make history ended with bruised egos, emotional trauma, and global embarrassment. For Givenchy, a house that had weathered wars, economic crashes, and changing fashion eras, this one bride, and the chaos she brought, was among the most difficult chapters of all. And now, with the leaked video reigniting global attention, the design house once again finds itself unwillingly dragged back into the storm. Journalists are contacting former employees. Social media users are dissecting every thread and stitch in the video clip, trying to decode facial expressions, gestures, and silent cues. Givenchy's management has issued no statements, choosing instead to remain silent. But for those who were there, no statement is necessary. They remember the all-nighters, the shouting, the silence, and above all, the moment everything came to a head, when a slap echoed through a room designed for beauty and left behind the scars of betrayal. In the vast, cold world of royal protocol and ceremonial obligations, Catherine, Princess of Wales, popularly known as Kate Middleton, has long represented a beacon of calm and quiet strength. Her poised demeanor, patient silence amid chaos, and unwavering commitment to tradition have earned her the admiration of much of the British public and international observers alike. But behind that composed exterior lies something even more powerful, a fiercely protective mother. In the swirling drama of Meghan Markle's wedding preparations, amidst whispered tales of tantrums, slights, and slaps, it was Kate's response, both visible and hidden, that offered the world a rare look into the maternal side of royalty. The story begins not with the slap itself, but with the days preceding the ceremony, when preparations for the bridesmaids, including Princess Charlotte, began to unravel. Kate, having already navigated royal weddings and public scrutiny, knew what to expect and how emotionally overwhelming these events could be, not just for the adults involved, but for children, particularly her daughter, thrust into the global spotlight at such a young age. Those close to the palace have long insisted that Kate was personally involved in every step of Charlotte's dress fittings, from the fabric selection to scheduling breaks during long rehearsal sessions so Charlotte wouldn't feel overwhelmed. It wasn't just about appearances for Kate. It was about ensuring her daughter was protected from the crushing expectations that came with being a royal child on one of the most watched days in modern history. According to royal insiders, the first sign of trouble came when Kate noticed the initial design of Charlotte's dress during a preliminary fitting. The dress, designed under the creative direction of Claire Waite-Keller of Givenchy, was reportedly elegant, but, in Kate's eyes, impractical for a 3-year-old. The skirt was unlined. The fit was overly tailored. There were concerns that Charlotte, known for her spirited nature and sensitivity to texture, would be uncomfortable. Kate, never one to demand spotlight or controversy, quietly requested modifications. She wanted a layer of soft cotton lining added beneath the silk to prevent chafing. She also asked for the length to be slightly increased to allow Charlotte more room to move without tripping, and perhaps most importantly, to make the child feel secure and not overly exposed in front of thousands. It was a reasonable mother's request. But when this information reportedly filtered back to Meghan through palace staff, the reaction was not cooperative. According to multiple witnesses, Meghan saw the request not as an act of concern, but as an intrusion into her creative control. She had been very specific about every aesthetic detail, and Kate's intervention, however gentle, was interpreted as a challenge. Sources familiar with the conversations described Meghan's response as curt, dismissive, and at times, hostile. One palace aide later revealed, Meghan made it clear that the dresses were to reflect her vision. She said, "This is my wedding, and everything must be my way." She didn't shout, but the way she said it left no room for discussion. Kate, caught in the delicate position of being both a senior royal and a mother, refused to escalate the situation. She reiterated her concerns quietly to the design team and suggested, diplomatically, that the changes be made at their discretion. Behind closed doors, however, those close to her say she was deeply upset, not just at the tension but at the fear that her daughter would be caught in the middle of a situation she couldn't understand. That fear would soon prove to be valid. On the day of the now infamous final fitting, the moment captured in the Nanny's leaked video, Kate was reportedly in an adjacent room when the confrontation unfolded. She had stepped away briefly to speak with another staff member, unaware that her earlier request had triggered what would become one of the most controversial incidents in royal wedding history. When the slap happened, Kate rushed into the room. Although her figure is not seen clearly in the clip, her voice, calm, composed, but unmistakably stern, is heard saying, "That's enough." It was a line loaded with meaning. Not a scream, not a scolding, but a boundary being drawn, a quiet but firm assertion that the chaos had gone too far. Those who know Kate say it was entirely in character. She does not seek confrontation, but when the safety of her children is threatened, her response is immediate and unwavering. After the incident, Kate reportedly removed Charlotte from the room, holding her daughter close and whispering softly as she carried her away. Staff members present described her as pale, visibly shaken, but determined not to cause further embarrassment by escalating the issue publicly. She did not scream. She did not demand consequences. She simply chose to protect her child and remove her from the toxic atmosphere. Later that evening, according to sources, Kate broke down in private. One member of her security detail described finding her alone in the palace garden, wiping tears from her eyes. She kept saying, "I just wanted her to have a beautiful day. I just wanted her to be happy." Those who were with her in the following days said she continued to shield Charlotte from the tension. She rehearsed quietly with her daughter, offered encouragement, and made sure that during the actual ceremony, Charlotte felt loved and included. Every photo from that day shows Charlotte smiling, carrying her flowers. walking proudly down the aisle. But behind that composed child was a mother who had absorbed the emotional fallout so her daughter wouldn't have to. Kate's approach to parenting, especially under the microscope of royalty, has always been marked by balance. She knows the value of tradition, but she also understands the importance of emotional intelligence. She has often spoken publicly about the challenges of motherhood, the guilt that accompanies working mothers, and the pressure to appear perfect. She has advocated for early childhood mental health, spearheaded initiatives to support families, and often chooses to speak from personal experience rather than royal script. It is this combination of duty and authenticity that has made her so beloved among British families. And in this case, it became her strength. The palace's silence following the incident was, in large part, driven by Kate herself. According to those close to the situation, she explicitly asked that the incident not be discussed publicly. Her reasoning was simple. She didn't want Charlotte to grow up knowing she had been at the center of a media storm. She didn't want the footage to become a permanent part of her daughter's digital footprint. And most of all, she didn't want the royal family, already fractured and fragile, to implode over what she saw as a deeply unfortunate but personal conflict. Even as Meghan's version of events began circulating in the press, including claims that Kate had made her cry, Kate remained silent. Not once did she correct the record. Not once did she retaliate with her own narrative. Instead, she remained committed to her children, her marriage, and her responsibilities. That silence, however, is now being re-examined in light of the video. Many are asking whether Kate was too generous, too forgiving, too focused on maintaining peace at her own expense. Could the palace's refusal to publicly support her during the early media firestorm be seen as a betrayal? Some royal commentators believe so. One longtime biographer of the royal family stated, Kate took the high road. But the palace's silence allowed a damaging narrative to fester. By not correcting the record, they let her take the blame for something that was never her fault. Today, Kate's public image remains largely untarnished. If anything, the video has bolstered her reputation. Supporters describe her as dignified, restrained, and maternal. The footage has reignited public admiration for her grace under pressure, with many calling her a model of modern royalty. And while she has never spoken directly about the slap or the dress saga, her actions have spoken volumes. She has continued her royal duties without interruption, increased her charity work around children's mental health, and, most notably, refused to engage in any public war of words with Meghan. Insiders say she has no intention of addressing the incident, even now. For Kate, the priority remains her children, not public vindication. Her decision to walk away from the chaos, to remove Charlotte from that room, to maintain her silence despite being misrepresented in the press, reflects a kind of power not often seen in the world of media-fueled celebrity conflict, the power of restraint. As the fallout from the leaked footage continues, more stories will emerge. There will be statements, denials, defenses, and blame. But the image that will remain etched in the minds of many is not the slap itself, but the quiet strength of a mother who, in a single moment, chose her daughter's safety over palace politics. For years, the British monarchy operated under the shield of silent loyalty. Staffers who served the royal family were not just employees. They were guardians of secrets, traditions, and the public image of one of the world's most scrutinized institutions. But when Meghan Markle entered the royal family, something shifted. The atmosphere, once steeped in order and restraint, reportedly turned volatile. What had previously been a disciplined, though often demanding environment, rapidly became emotionally chaotic for those working behind palace walls. The leaked clip of Meghan slapping a Givenchy staffer did not just vindicate months of murmurs, it opened the floodgates for former royal employees who had, until now, kept their experiences quietly locked away. The term Duchess Difficult first appeared in tabloid headlines in 2018, shortly after several members of Meghan's Kensington Palace staff unexpectedly resigned in quick succession. At the time, many royal watchers dismissed the narrative as gossip or coded racism, an attempt to undermine a biracial woman who had married into Britain's most traditional institution. But now, in the wake of credible video evidence and the royal nanny supporting testimony, former aides have come forward to add texture, context, and shocking depth to what was previously considered rumor. Among the first to speak was Melissa Tabati, Meghan's personal assistant, who abruptly left her position just 6 months after the royal wedding. Tabati was reportedly responsible for managing Meghan's daily schedule, overseeing communication between departments, and ensuring everything from outfits to public appearances ran smoothly. But behind the scenes, sources say, her role was far more taxing. One close friend of Tabati later shared with the press, she was working 18-hour days, often in tears, juggling demands that changed every hour, never knowing when the next reprimand would come. It wasn't the workload. It was the emotional abuse. There was no appreciation, only correction. At the time of her departure, the palace issued a short statement thanking her for her hard work and dedication. But insiders say the resignation was triggered by an explosive encounter in which Tabati was allegedly shouted at for ordering a pair of shoes that did not align with Meghan's vision for a tour wardrobe. According to sources, she left the room shaking and told a colleague, "This job is not worth my mental health." Tabati was not alone. Samantha Cohen, a long-serving member of the royal staff who had worked closely with Queen Elizabeth for 17 years, was temporarily assigned to help Meghan transition into royal life. Her appointment was widely seen as a gesture of goodwill, a seasoned hand tasked with helping the Duchess navigate protocol and etiquette. But even Cohen, known for her calm demeanor and diplomatic skills, reportedly found the assignment impossible. According to palace insiders, Cohen was stunned by Meghan's unwillingness to take advice. "She was hard to guide Meghan," said one source, but every suggestion was met with resistance. Meghan didn't want to adapt to the royal system. She wanted the system to adapt to her. Cohen left her post in less than a year. Officially, it was described as the end of a temporary assignment, but colleagues revealed that she had grown emotionally exhausted. She loved the Queen, one former aide said. She didn't want her final years in the palace to be defined by conflict. So she walked away quietly. Perhaps the most devastating testimony came from two junior staffers who worked in Meghan and Harry's household. While they've chosen to remain anonymous, they shared nearly identical accounts: high turnover, unpredictable moods, and a sense of walking on eggshells every day. "You never knew which Meghan you were going to get," said one former assistant. "One day she'd smile and thank you for your work. The next, she'd question your intelligence because a candle was moved half an inch off center." It was exhausting. We'd warn new hires, "Be prepared, she doesn't suffer imperfection." The other staffer, a young woman in her mid-20s who had transferred from another royal office, recalled feeling excited at first. "I thought, here's this progressive couple, doing things differently." But the reality was chaos. You couldn't ask questions. You couldn't make mistakes. And if you did, you were made to feel worthless. Both staffers said that internal complaints were discouraged. When one tried to raise concerns with a senior household manager, she was told to manage expectations and reminded of her confidentiality agreement. "There was no protection for us. We were just collateral damage in a narrative." One especially chilling account involved an incident during a pre-tour planning meeting. Meghan, upset about the itinerary for an upcoming overseas trip, reportedly slammed a folder on the table and shouted at a junior aide, "If you can't get this right, I'll find someone who can." The room went silent. The aide, visibly shaken, later requested a transfer to another department. What emerges from these testimonies is a pattern, not of isolated outbursts, but of sustained emotional volatility. While supporters of Meghan have often defended her as a strong, assertive woman pushing against an outdated system, these former employees paint a different picture, that of a woman unwilling to share control, dismissive of expertise, and often cruel to those she deemed beneath her. The leaked video, in many ways, was the final straw. Staff who had felt gaslit for years, their experiences denied or minimized, now had something tangible to point to. "We were told to be silent," said one former dresser. "But now the world has seen it. They've seen what we lived with." After the video's release, palace HR officials reportedly reached out to former employees, not to apologize, but to assess potential legal risk. According to sources, a handful of NDAs were re-reviewed, and legal counsel advised the palace to maintain a position of non-engagement. One former staff member received a letter reminding them of their ongoing obligations under the Official Secrets Act. But the damage, at least reputationally, had already been done. Public opinion began to shift. A new light was cast on the early resignations, the quiet departures, the sudden silences. Meghan's denials, once accepted at face value, were now being scrutinized against the backdrop of real, verifiable evidence. Some royal experts suggest that Meghan's Hollywood background played a role in her attitude toward staff. "In LA, assistants are disposable," said one former publicist. "The culture there is transactional. If someone fails you, you replace them." That doesn't translate well inside a centuries-old institution where loyalty is currency. But others argue that this behavior goes deeper than cultural misunderstanding. One senior palace official, retired now, was blunt. There's ambition, and then there's entitlement. Meghan crossed the line. She didn't want to be a team player. She wanted to be the show. Still, not every staff member who worked with Meghan left on bad terms. A few described her as charming in public, attentive during ceremonial engagements, and deeply aware of optics. She knew how to work a room, one said. But behind closed doors, the warmth disappeared. What becomes clear is that the experiences of these employees, often young, overworked, and voiceless, reveal the human cost of royal image-making. Their testimonies are not just about one slap, one dress, or one incident. They're about a pattern of behavior that drove skilled, loyal workers away from jobs they once considered a dream. The palace has not issued a statement in response to these new revelations. Meghan and Harry's team has also remained silent, offering no rebuttals or clarifications. Legal experts predict that more staff may come forward in the coming weeks, especially as public interest in the story continues to build. For those who left quietly, dignity intact, this moment offers a form of closure. Their stories, once ignored or ridiculed, are finally being heard. And in an institution built on silence, that in itself is a quiet revolution. On May 19, 2018, the world paused to witness what appeared to be the perfect fairy tale. The setting was Windsor Castle, a venue steeped in centuries of regal tradition. The weather was flawless. The music was moving. The bride, Meghan Markle, glowed in her minimalist Givenchy gown, her veil delicately sweeping the stone floor of St. George's Chapel. The groom, Prince Harry, stood in full military dress, his face a blend of excitement and reverence. The crowd erupted. Celebrities lined the pews. Millions watched with tears in their eyes. It was, to the public, a flawless ceremony, symbolic, elegant, a message of modernity and inclusion. But behind that carefully crafted image lay a much darker, more complicated truth, one now coming undone. The question that lingers, especially after the explosive release of the leaked slap video, is simple yet profound. Was the royal wedding a celebration of love, or an elaborate performance masking internal fractures? From the very start, the wedding had been marketed as a step into a new future. Meghan, a biracial American divorcee, represented change. She was poised, confident, socially conscious, and introduced a new kind of voice into the monarchy. Her background in television brought an air of glamour and modernity, while her philanthropic passions gave her a reputation of depth. But that same background also brought a production-minded approach to what had traditionally been a deeply ceremonial affair. Multiple palace insiders have since revealed that Meghan was deeply involved in every aspect of the wedding, far beyond what previous royal brides had typically overseen. She chose her own music arrangements, handpicked nearly all the floral designs, rewrote elements of the order of service, and even insisted on changes to the processional layout, a demand that reportedly shocked some of the older royal advisors. While Kate Middleton and even Princess Diana before her had maintained a deference to tradition, Meghan was determined to do things her way. There were early warning signs that the production was spiraling into something far less harmonious. Sources close to the planning process described late-night calls to staff, last-minute changes to table arrangements, and unreasonable expectations of royal personnel and event coordinators. It was a wedding, yes, said one planner, but it felt more like a TV production. Every angle, every moment, had to be controlled. Nothing was left to chance. This attention to detail may have produced stunning optics, but it also created unbearable tension within palace walls. At the center of that tension was the bride's growing reputation for being demanding, inflexible, and dismissive toward long-standing royal staff. Several key aides resigned in the weeks before and after the wedding, including personal assistant Melissa Dabadi, whose departure raised eyebrows even before the slap story surfaced. One former aide, who had served in the royal household for over 15 years, described the atmosphere as toxic. She said, "People were walking on eggshells. You didn't know if today would be the day you were praised or publicly scolded. And there was never a moment to breathe. The pressure to create something perfect meant no one could ever admit anything was wrong." That need for perfection extended to the press coverage. The palace, determined to protect the image of unity, reportedly imposed tight restrictions on media access. Journalists were denied the usual levels of background briefings. Photo permissions were tightly controlled. Even veteran royal correspondents found themselves sidelined in favor of Hollywood-aligned outlets with friendlier coverage. At the time, it seemed harmless, a bride eager to control her big day. But in hindsight, this media strategy now appears to have been part of a larger effort to preserve a manufactured reality, even as staff morale crumbled behind the scenes. And yet, the public bought into the fantasy. Newspapers ran glowing headlines: a modern love story, the wedding that changed the monarchy, the American princess who captured Britain's heart. Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams, George Clooney, and other high-profile guests praised the elegance of the ceremony. The sermon by Bishop Michael Curry, the gospel choir, the visual of a woman of color marrying into British royalty, all of it was hailed as a cultural moment. But where was the reality? Even before the video leak, cracks had begun to appear. Less than a year after the wedding, Meghan and Harry's relationship with the royal family visibly deteriorated. Reports of behind-the-scenes feuds between Meghan and Kate emerged. Questions were raised about staff resignations. Public appearances grew less frequent. The couple began distancing themselves from the senior royals, eventually stepping down from their official roles in 2020. At the time, their departure was framed as a response to relentless press attacks and internal institutional racism. And to many, that explanation was valid. But the slap video and the resurfacing of testimonies from former staff now complicates that narrative. It introduces a disturbing new element. That behind the elegant procession and the carefully rehearsed vows was an environment poisoned by ego, manipulation, and unchecked power. Several observers have now likened the wedding to a theater performance. It was a pageant, one insider said. Every smile, every gesture was rehearsed. Even the off-script moments, the stolen glances, the hand squeezes, were discussed ahead of time. It wasn't about love. It was about branding. This isn't to say that there was no genuine affection between Meghan and Harry. Those close to the couple insist that their bond was and remains authentic. But the institution around them, and the culture Meghan brought into it, transformed what could have been a sincere ceremony into a stage-managed event, prioritizing optics over authenticity. And then there's the matter of the children. The bridesmaids, particularly Princess Charlotte, were centerpieces in the spectacle. Dressed in ivory gowns designed to match the bride's own, they were meant to evoke innocence and beauty. But as the leaked video makes painfully clear, Charlotte and the other children were exposed to behind-the-scenes turmoil that belied the picture of joy shown to the world. One staffer who worked with the young bridesmaids recalled how the children were confused by the intensity around them. They didn't understand why adults were arguing, the staffer said. Charlotte was especially sensitive. She kept asking if she had done something wrong. And yet, the ceremony continued. Royal advisors, determined to uphold tradition, ensured that no hint of the chaos seeped into public view. Everyone played their part. Everyone smiled. The choir sang. The vows were exchanged. The world applauded. But now, years later, with the video spreading across social media and questions resurfacing, the wedding is being reinterpreted. What once seemed like a modern fairy tale is now seen by many as a masterpiece of deception, a meticulously crafted illusion that concealed not just interpersonal conflict, but a complete breakdown in internal royal harmony. Even the simplest moments, like Meghan's walk down the aisle or her reception speech, are now being viewed with skepticism. Was the emotion real? Or was it a performance designed to solidify a narrative? In a culture increasingly obsessed with transparency, this kind of reveal, exposing the cracks in a global event watched by billions, has far-reaching consequences. Public trust is eroding. Supporters who once defended Meghan with passion are now conflicted. And the monarchy, already battling waning relevance in a rapidly changing society, must grapple with the fact that one of its most televised triumphs may have been a well-disguised disaster. More than a ceremony, the wedding was supposed to be a message of inclusion, modernity, and harmony. But for those who lived through its planning, who bore the brunt of behind-the-scenes hostility, it is remembered as something else entirely, a storm wrapped in silk and gold. The moment the video leaked online, Buckingham Palace went into emergency mode. While the public watched, shared, and dissected the short, jarring clip of Meghan Markle slapping a Givenchy staffer during Princess Charlotte's final bridesmaid fitting, inside the palace walls, the response was swift, severe, and alarmed. This wasn't just a media scandal. It was a direct threat to the credibility and stability of an institution that has survived centuries of upheaval by mastering the art of silence and restraint. But no amount of practiced discretion could bury what was now plainly visible to the world. According to sources close to the palace, the initial reaction from top aides and courtiers was one of disbelief, not because the clip was shocking in its content, but because it had finally surfaced. The existence of such footage had been a closely guarded secret. Only a small circle of trusted palace staff had ever been aware of it, and even fewer had seen it. The identity of the person who captured it, the royal nanny, had remained protected, her actions never officially acknowledged but clearly known within certain senior ranks. That it was now public, accessible with a few clicks on nearly every social media platform, sent shockwaves across the monarchy's operational hierarchy. Within hours, an emergency meeting was called at the palace, led by key members of King Charles's inner circle, including his private secretary, legal advisors, and senior communications staff. The Queen Consort, Camilla, and Prince William were also looped in immediately. The seriousness of the situation was undeniable. This was not a scandal that could be dismissed as tabloid fabrication. It wasn't speculative, nor was it reliant on anonymous sources or hidden hearsay. It was visual proof. It showed a royal family member, on palace grounds, physically striking a staffer in front of a child. The reputational consequences were enormous, not only for Meghan, but for the institution as a whole, particularly given that the monarchy had long refused to comment on the alleged toxic environment Meghan created during her time in the UK. At the heart of the palace's concern was not only the content of the footage but the timing of its release. With King Charles still relatively early in his reign and attempting to modernize the monarchy's public image, a scandal of this magnitude threatened to derail those efforts. Furthermore, the continued distancing of Prince Harry and Meghan from royal duties had already strained the family's image.